Yay.
We are live. Welcome to the Bradbury Challenge, the podcast where three writers attempt to write one story each week. My name is Maya, and I am here with Gerald Hornsby and Chrissy Moss. How are you guys doing this week?
Really good.
I'm
Really good.
so glad that you sound better. Oh my goodness. It's great to see you all smiling and healthy. So how did everybody's writing go this week?
Fantastic.
How about you, Gerald? I know, right?
Did you say what?
She stole my line. I'm fantastic also.
Fantabulous.
Yeah. Good stop.
That's great. Mine was so-so. I finished my story, but don't like it. And so I sat down and re-outlined the entire thing. And I'm just going to start from scratch, ripped it up, pretend like it didn't happen, start over.
Sometimes that's a good thing.
Yeah, I think it will be. It's a story I've been wanting to write for a while, and I just approached it from the completely wrong direction. So what made your writing this week so good?
Well, I got an idea on Tuesday, and it was a random idea that just, I don't even remember where it came from. And I just started writing it, and I had to write it on my phone because I was out and about and I had nothing else to write on except for my phone.
Yeah.
So I got like 500 words in on my phone,
That's awesome.
Which is an interesting experience if you ever write on your phone. But when I got home later that night, I transferred it over to Scrivener and cleaned it up, and it decided it needed to be in first person. And 2 hours later, I had a complete story. And I find for me that stories that take me like 3 or 4 hours, those ones are better than the ones I slave over, because they are the ones that get the most comments. They are the ones that people seem to connect with the most. They're the ones that people tell me those are your best stories. So
yeah, it's like the story just wants to come out of you, and it only takes a couple hours to get that draft out. It may take you longer to edit it, but it just comes out of you because the story is just there waiting to be had.
Right. And once I put it in first person, though, and it's a first person male, so it's even more unusual for me.
How did you know that it needed to be in first person? What made you decide to change direction on that?
I don't know. I started because it's about a man and a woman, or a husband and wife, and she comes home and says, I want to have a baby. And I think I wanted to get more into his headspace and see where his emotions about it, because he doesn't.
Yeah.
So.
And usually those types of stories are usually told from the female point of view. So it'll be interesting to have that from the male point of view. I think that's a really interesting decision. Definitely.
Well, and frankly, I am a woman who doesn't want to have any more kids. So, I've had mine. I'm done.
How about you, Gerald?
Yeah, I wrote so much I had to write it on a piece of paper so I could remember.
Wow.
Yeah, five stories this week.
So next week you have to have 6.
No.
Whoa, no. Right, yeah, I did another one of my archetypes, so I think I've got 2 more to write. But I wrote another 4 short stories, 2 sci-fi, 1 thriller, if you can write a thriller short story, and 1 that's about gender identity.
So did you start and complete all of these this week?
Mm-hmm.
And how long are they?
They're 1,200, 2,100, 1,000, 660.
So all under 2,000 words.
Yeah.
But that's still a lot of words.
Still a lot of words.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like my short stories really quite short. So I don't know. I find it difficult to write more than a couple of thousand words on a short story. And I don't know why, but yeah, it sort of ceases to become a short story for me. I just love flash fiction. I think that's more to the point, and so that's what I tend to do.
You know, I've had novel brain for so long that the couple times I've tried to write flash fiction, it hasn't been as good as when I wrote it before. I look at some of my old flash, and yes, it needs edited. Yes, like simple stuff. It's up there. I've left it up on my website the way it is because it was huge for me to write those first flash stories. But they are significantly better than any flash I would write now. And I think it's just because I've had novel brain for, a year and a half. Yeah. And getting into flash is a specific type of writing.
Yeah, I think I agree because I was doing the trilogy, and I've spent the last year and a half on the trilogy and editing and doing that, and now I'm starting to get not flash so much, but starting to get back into the groove of finishing a story every week. Well, it's been every 2 weeks now. I think I can do it every week.
Yeah, I think I'm the opposite way round. I've got a novel that I'm working on. And I'm desperate to go back to, but I keep on thinking of short stories I want to write. So I just can't get out there.
So maybe that is the secret to writing more stories, is to have a project that you really should be writing on that you are avoiding. And then all the flash gets written.
There you go.
Write all the flash.
That is another solution.
It's funny. I looked last night to see what my next short story is going to be, and I think I've run out of. I was going to say run out of ideas. I've run out of ideas that I've previously noted. So I'm an empty vessel. I'm looking for ideas now, but maybe I should go back to my novel.
I can send you my files. I have like 3,000 ideas just sitting on a hard drive.
No, thank you.
That is so many ideas. Mind blown.
I love brainstorming. It's like one of my favorite things to do. And so I have just pages of brainstormed ideas. Not that I will ever use them, but they're there.
Yeah.
And every once in a while, if I get stuck, I will go through and read through them, and something might leap out at me, or if I need some inspiration. So it's nice in that way, but I have no illusions that they will ever be done.
See, I don't have that. But you know what I've always thought would be interesting is sometimes if I'm on BookTube, you'll see BookTubers, I'll have like a jar with a list of books that they want to be reading, like a TBR jar, and then they'll just pick one. I think that would be really cool to have like a bunch of story ideas in a jar, and you can just reach in and just pick one randomly. But they're ideas that you chose rather than just random writing prompts. I think that would be really, really cool. This week's story, like I said, I wasn't pleased with it. I've had this idea in my head about a little girl who was bullied but makes friends because she is a storyteller. But her stories aren't really stories. They're actually happening. And it's kind of paranormally. And I didn't approach it in a right way. I think I approached it really distant. I approached the story too far ahead. I think I need to start the story later when the actual story happens. I think that was a huge problem with it. And I think I'm going to bring back my bee metaphor, because I was like, okay, so am I going to be writing a version of like Fantasies, which is a novel by I'm just going to totally... my brain. You have the name of somebody, the guy who wrote The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. Please.
C.S. Lewis.
Thank you. C.S. Lewis wrote this tiny little book, and it's called Fantasies, and it's amazing. I have to admit, I'm not a fan of his, but I love that book. And I was like, okay, so is it going to be like that? No, I want it to be more unique. And so I think I'm going to bring back my bee metaphor. And
what's a bee metaphor?
This idea in African mythology and in like the Ifa and the Voodoo religions, bees are messengers for one of the goddesses.
Oh, okay.
And so it's the idea of her playing with bees and getting stories from bees and using the stories to make friends. And it's called Storyteller, which is a horrible name for a short story. And so, yeah, the whole thing.
You just gave me a great idea for a story.
Starting over. just wiping it clean, starting over from the beginning. But on the plus side, I got my 4 stories back from the editor that I sent them to last week, and I was really pleased with honestly, I thought I was going to have a lot more comments because I spent so long working on my grammar and the technical aspects of my writing that I've known that they're not clean. And they were a lot cleaner than I thought they were. And the suggestions were all suggestions that I totally agreed with for the most part. There were a couple like word choices like, no, my writing sounds like this. And I'm keeping my English gray because the American gray is ugly on paper and no one can tell me otherwise.
I don't even know what that means, but okay.
Spelling
gray spelled with an E instead of an A. I hate gray spelled with an A. I hate it. I think it's an ugly word. And so I use it spelled with an E, and every editor says, that's the British gray. I'm like, no, I use the British gray. Sorry. But it's funny because it's come up before. There are certain words that I spell the British way, and it's because I'm that anal about my writing. I'm like, I don't like the way this word looks on paper. It's ugly. So I'm going to use this version.
It's like me with my drug and dragged.
Yeah.
I refuse to use that word because it doesn't sound like a real word to me.
Yeah, because you are on the Pacific Northwest and we don't use drugged out here. We don't.
North Dakota also, but yeah.
Whereas you go to New York and you're going to hear it and then it's going to sound more normal. It doesn't sound normal to me either, but I'll use dragged in prose.
See,
and then it sounds horrible. I'll use dragged in prose and then I'll use drug in dialogue. So yeah, that's where my writing was. I was really stoked. I went through one of the stories and cleaned it up and used it for my Vona app. My application for the Vona Writers Conference was right up to the wire. I got it in with a half an hour to spare, and I used one of those stories because I knew that the grammar wasn't so bad that it would offend them. And so hopefully I'll get in. It's a really hard conference to get in. So I hold no illusions, and I messed up a little bit. I chose my first choice as both my first and my second choice on accident. So I have no second choice.
Oh, no.
And it's a really hard conference to get in. It's extremely competitive. It's taught by some really, really influential writers. I'm like, really? I did that? That was right up there with sending in that short story to Carve with track changes on. Yeah, I did that. It was such like a rookie error. I'm just imagining these editors printing it out going, really, girl? They probably passed it around and like had a good chuckle. So, what was your first editing experience like? Was it with a short story or was it with a novel, Chrissy?
You mean like with an actual editor?
Yeah, with an actual editor.
I think the first thing I ever had, well, because I've done like a lot of workshops and stuff where I had sent in short stories or chapters of novels and learned the basics of editing and how you mark up a manuscript and stuff. So that got me into it, I guess. But the first thing I actually sent to an editor was my story Osiren's Tears, and that was, I think it's 30 or 40,000 words, so a short novel. What are you laughing at, Gerald?
Yeah, I totally busted him. I was like, eat quietly in the Blad chat. I was like, because I am picturing me in editing going, funny.
Well,
chop.
I turned my mixer down, so there's no.
I am such like the podcast mom. I'm like, no typing, no eating, sit down, be good, behave.
And that is why I only typed H and I in the chat.
Okay, I'm sorry that totally interrupted you. That totally sidetracked you. I was trying to do it quietly so you wouldn't get distracted because I liked what you were saying. So Finish your thought.
So yeah, Oh Siren's Tears was the first one, and I went through a couple of different editors trying to find the best balance, I guess, because the last the one when I started getting my trilogy, the first book in the trilogy, I actually had a professional edit on it, which, if you don't know, professional editor, they are a lot tougher than a lot of other editors. This particular one didn't give me any like good feedback. She didn't have the glowing stuff to say like, this part's awesome, I love this part and stuff like that. She just edited it, and that's not a bad thing. That was
you were prepared for that.
I cannot handle it myself. Me emotionally and mentally can't handle it. I need somebody who I feel that they love my writing. Yeah. And I need some, I need that feedback saying, okay, this is good, because I don't have enough self-confidence in my writing by myself. So if I'm giving this to you to edit, sure, you might be doing a great job with the grammar and making sure the sentences are okay and everything, but if I don't have that feedback saying that you actually like it, then I'm just going to come away thinking, well, it's crap and you're just doing your job because you have to.
Aw. Yeah. See, I'm totally not like that, but I think it's because I'm so brutal with my own writing.
Well, I think I suck, and that's what it is. Oh. So I need a little bit of encouragement, because I don't have anybody else reading my stuff or anything. The first person who looks at my stuff is the editor. And so that little bit of encouragement where he says, this line is great, or, I like how this is flowing, or, just those little things are so much encouragement. So when I put it out there, finally, I feel confident at least that I'm not putting out a crappy piece of, whatever.
Yeah. I think you're more likely to get that kind of feedback with the developmental editor, because it's really important, because sometimes what'll happen is they'll tell you what's wrong, and then you'll go and you'll change what's right. Right. And so a lot of developmental editors will make points of the pacing in the section's really good. These sentences are really good. Make sure you leave this section alone. But a copywriter, a lot of times, they're literally just going through to clean up your commas, your punctuation, your typos, your spelling errors, your sentence structure.
And I think in order to get better, you also need to know what you're doing right.
Exactly.
Because if you, like you said, if you don't know, you might just go back in and change it, and then it's made it worse.
I've actually had that happen with the very first story I ever sent to an editor. I didn't have the emotional strength. Well, I wouldn't call it strength. I didn't have the confidence to know when my disagreements with her remarks were valid and when they weren't. So I took all of her comments, and the story was horrible. Right. And I ended up going back, and this is why I keep I keep files of every single iteration of my stories. So then I went back and I started doing what I do now. When I got my edits back, even though his edits were like, a lot of them were really basic, there were a few that were a little more complex. And I sit down with every single suggestion, even the really obvious ones, and I read the rules and I make the decision for myself. And so one of the suggestions was I used the word velleity, and he was like, wouldn't inclination be a better word here? I'm like, maybe not. So my inclination was, no, it's not a better word, but I wanted to make sure that wasn't coming from my own, like, I'm right, I like pretty words. So I pulled out both my dictionaries and I sat down and I read the nuances between the two words, because they're very close, they're very similar. And I decided, no, I was right. Velleity is the correct word for what I was trying to express there. And that sounds really like on the micro level, but that's how I write. I do pay attention to literally is this word exactly what I want it to be? But it was the right choice for me. And I went back and I read that section with both versions, and my version sounds more like me.
Right. Well, and word choices also have to do with the style you're trying to put into something, and the type of person you're trying to communicate with.
The tone, and all of that. Yeah. And in this particular instance, it's a small girl who she's gone through some rough times. She's with her friends in the middle of a river on a raft that they built that fell apart, and her friends are swimming to shore, and she has a moment where she's not sure she wants to try to swim. She doesn't know how to swim, but she's not sure she wants to try. And in that instance, the difference between inclination and velleity also was a not tone, an essence difference. So velleity sounds much more water. It sounds more fluid, and she's in fluid than inclination did. And she doesn't really have the inclination. It was like this little thing that popped up, but it was so slight she didn't notice. So I definitely felt it was a better word. But now I can look at that word and I know why I used it, rather than it just being the word I stuck there and I wasn't sure why.
Just off the top of my head, I've never heard that word before.
Oh, yeah. I look up when I read books. When I read books, I look up every single word that I don't know. Mm. Let me tell you, my reading's gotten much faster since I got a Kindle. Because before I used to read I used to read with 2 dictionaries next to me. I would be reading a novel. I did this with Middlesex. Because I read Middlesex on paper, and so I'm reading this fairly good sized novel, and then I stop mid sentence to go get my American or English OED to go look up this freaking word.
See, and you read a lot more literary fiction, and I read a lot more science fiction and fantasy, so my vocabulary is probably different than yours.
Yeah, and you probably, I would think with science fiction and fantasy, you would still run into a lot of different words, but they would be like technology or even made up words, in which case the definition is given in the story.
Well, a lot of made up words in science fiction are now actual words because they started like transporters. That came from science fiction. But we are currently working on developing transporter technology with quantum physics. So, it kind of bleeds over.
It's funny because I take notes of everything I read for the most part. Excuse me. Mm-hmm. And certain words, I'm pretty, like velleity, I'm pretty sure I learned that word when I read Middlesex. Like there are certain words I'm like, I see the word, I'm like, oh, I know the first time I remember looking that word up, I was reading such and such. It's like a memory thing, kind of like music, you listen to a song and it's like, oh yeah, I remember when I was in 8th grade, and I do that with words.
I've done that with certain concepts or themes.
Mm-hmm.
And
definitely.
I know with Piers Anthony, I liked reading him because a lot of the things he wrote out actually had influence on present life. And so I took from that whole writing about what's going on now kind of thing.
Exactly. And if you think back, like a lot of old science fiction, a lot of our scientists now read a lot of science fiction when they were children, and you can see the different direction where science has been pushed because art gave them ideas. And so art definitely pushes culture in multiple ways that people don't necessarily consider. Science fiction's had a huge impact on science and medicine. There were things that were written about in the 30s that ended up becoming real,
Well, I want to hear more about Gerald's writing this week.
Totally.
Me?
Who you? Well, I was waiting for him to finish his little.
Yeah, he looks like his mouth is full now. So.
No, I was waiting for a space so I could speak.
You don't just get in there. What do you?
Maya and I were having a great conversation. Thank you for not interrupting.
It was interesting. So that's fine. I know my place. It's okay. It's speaking. I just said in the comments. I don't like reading fiction that has words I don't know, and I because I get into the story. I like reading the story, and if I have to stop reading the story to look up something like velleity, whatever the hell that is,
we love you, Maya.
it sort of pulls me out of the story, and it's if I'm reading, because Maya did this great podcast with the self-publishing guys about reading, what was it called?
Intentionally.
Reading intentionally. and
Mm-hmm.
and nearly all of my reading is reading for fun. So I like to enjoy the stories, and that's why I don't get caught up in this whole print media versus ebook thing, because for me it doesn't matter what you read it on. It's the story, it's the message that you're reading, not the
Right.
media. So I always try and use fairly simple words. And Stephen King said something about that once, which I can't remember. But I've with a couple of my stories this week, which are based around sort of technical stuff, sort of computer science. One's software and one's sort of robotics. The first draft looks to me a bit too technical. I think there's too much technical jargon in there, and I think I'm going to have to go through that and strip some of that out, because I don't want people to think, oh yeah, he's just info dumping on us this stuff. So
I think there's a difference between
well, I was going to say, people who love science fiction and fantasy, they love those kind of things. The reason The Martian is such a big seller is because it has so much science in it. It's just like, oh my God, give me more of that. And then when you go to the movie and it's less science and more people interaction, yeah,
it's a different audience. That's exactly where I was going to go. You're totally right.
Yeah, because my favorite science fiction are exactly that. They have tons of science. They have tons of info dumping. Well, and it doesn't feel like info dumping the way they put it in there, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say that there's a difference between having a lot of technical stuff in your writing and info dumping. If the technology is put in a way that really pertains to the story and is interesting and fun to read about, then you don't need to take that out, Gerald. There's a lot of really good writers that write that way, and people love it.
And even with new words like the one Maya keeps using that I can't even say, if you use it in a sentence that gets the point across, then you don't need to look it up. It just kind of flows across and you get it. My problem with a lot of not all, I love literary fiction sometimes, but some of it just uses the words and expects you to know it and doesn't get the meaning across. So, and
I think a lot of books, period, are doing that lately. When I was younger, I was reading way above my reading level, to the point now where I mispronounce a lot of words because I never heard them spoken. I've only read certain words. And
Fox.
But I found that 99% of the time I knew what the word meant just in context. And I don't know if the writing has gotten worse, or like my kids can't do that, or if maybe they weren't taught how to figure out a word in context. I don't know what that is, but I do look up more words in modern fiction than I do in older fiction, even if they're written at the same level with the same types of vocabulary.
Yeah.
And I have a really extensive vocabulary.
You mean sounding out words and stuff?
No, I mean just like being able to read a sentence and know what an unfamiliar word means in context. I feel like in a lot of older books, I could do that easier. Older literary fiction, and then I can do it now with a lot of newer literary fiction.
Yeah, I don't know. I think the way they learn to read and stuff is completely different from what I did when I was younger.
Yeah. I know that when I read Fates and Furies, I was looking up words all the time. When I read Inheritance, I don't think I looked up one word in that entire book.
I was just throwing it across the room.
Inheritance was a beautiful book, and
I haven't read that.
I think you would love it. I think you would actually love that book, Chrissy. Even people that don't like literary fiction, I think.
Tell me it's not all metaphors.
It's just a really good story. So yeah, I think that's really interesting. Gerald, have you ever worked with an editor?
No, I've worked with my wife. My wife is my editor, and she's
lucky you.
Yeah,
I need one of those.
She's very
both a
good.
wife and an editor.
You need a wife?
I'll take them both. I'll take a wife and an editor, preferably rolled up in one, but I'm not picky. I can take two.
As long as she does the dishes, right?
No, that is, she can have kids. Kids can do dishes. I'm good for that.
There you go. Even better. Kids, I'm going over here and watching this movie. Dishes now.
You've been listening to my house.
No, so I've never worked with an external editor and never needed to. And I think the work did when I first started writing 13 years ago with a very interactive literary short story writing group made me very self-aware of my writing, of my story construction, and I get a feel for when something is right, and it's I don't know, it's kind of hard to, when you've written a lot, and this is the person with over 1 million words, 1,200,000 or something there sitting around. I've written a lot, and I've read back a lot, and I sort of feel that when a story is being told properly, I get a good feeling about it, and when something isn't being told properly, I can recognize that too. So when I eventually do complete a novel to more than a first draft, I'll consider sending it to an external editor as well. I don't know. Because I'm part of a real life critique group as well, where we critique about 1,000, 1,500 words of our novels. So I'm getting feedback on that, on the general storyline as well. So I don't know, everyone says you have to have an external editor, and I've read that so many times, and
but you have one. She's just somebody that
you
you're
don't
married
pay.
to.
Yeah.
Well, unless you're giving her your paycheck every week, but no.
In the history of literature, there have been a lot of married couples that were partners in their writing.
Yeah.
Where one would edit and one would write.
Or they would both write and both edit.
Even Raymond Carver, I think it was his first or second wife. She used to go over his stories. And when he was drunk, there was some question over whether they were her stories or his stories. Because he had a little period where, he wasn't all there. Stephen King's wife goes over his stories. And so I think that's really common. One thing that's going to be really interesting is when I leave the country, because I'm looking forward to meeting and interacting with writers in other countries. Storytelling can be very different culturally. And I'm really looking forward to widening my pool of writing community. I think it's going to be fun. It's one of the reasons why I'm working so hard to learn Spanish, is so I can participate in the writing community when I'm in Central and South America. And that way I can get that feedback. I like having lots of different types of feedback. And one thing that hurts me with my writing group, I've been writing with them 2 years now.
Why does that sound so?
Because I don't know anybody for 2 years. I'm a hermit. I don't like people. Like, I like Gerald because he's really far away and he smiles and laughs at my jokes.
You've known me for 2 years.
Yeah, but that was peripherally. These are people I see like on a regular basis, and I still like them. It's quite odd.
Should I be
Don't be her friend.
So, yeah, and originally we started with just writing. We didn't critique. We critiqued for a year, and we've gone back to just writing together. And I think it fits for us because we all write so differently. So I am a horrible person at critiquing romance. And the other guy writes science fiction, and I write literary fiction. So it just makes no sense for us to be critiquing each other because we all have different goals for our writing. We tell each other where something slows down or where we've lost interest or we've gotten distracted or if something's just glaringly obvious. But as far as getting down into the nitty gritty of story construction on a romance novel, I can't do that. And so we ended up being just we get together, we have our little writer support group where we whine and cry about our writing, and then we drink some wine, and then we sit down at our computers and we write together.
We whine.
And it works good for us. Exactly.
Yeah, all of the people in my critique group, we all write genre fiction, different genres, and it's kind of interesting. It's a bit like the Roadhouse book clubs because you're reading stuff that you don't normally read that's outside of your writing genre, and you can make valid comments about it and valid critiques. So it seems to work, and we've been going over a year now, just critiquing. Yeah.
How many people are in your group?
Regulars, probably about 7 or 8.
And if you look at your writing now compared to when you started going to groups, do you see a difference that you think is because you've been going to groups? Or do you think you would still be where you're at now, even if you weren't going to a writing group?
As far as writing quality is concerned, that's nothing to do with the group. But what I'm getting feedback on and what is being affected is my storytelling. So some of the critiques I get back are really, really strong critiques, good critiques, and like the last time I put a section that's heavy on dialogue, and they picked up on some little nuances that I left in there, and they said, yeah, overall it's good, but we're getting the wrong impression of this person, and so it's not writing quality critique, it's storytelling, which is different. And I write how I write.
Sounds kind of like a beta reader, or
it's that sort of thing. Yeah, it's I write how I'm going to write, and I ain't going to change that, and no one's going to change that. Well, no one's going to. No one's going to
change the way I write.
No.
But they have. They've changed your approach to storytelling by giving you critiques that help you make your storytelling tighter and stronger. That's part of writing.
I guess. Yeah, I get it's style. That's
you still have your voice.
Yeah.
You're always going to have your voice. Like if Chrissy reads her story, even if we were to put a Vader voice on it and not see her face, by now we could probably tell it's a Chrissy story. And the same with you, because we all have our individual voices. And I don't think that changes regardless of, once you have your voice, then you can keep becoming a better writer, but you're still probably going to have the same voice. Unless like you have a car accident and your personality changes.
Yeah.
Personality changes.
Let's not do that.
No.
Yeah, let's not do that. But maybe your personality changes can, I would think have an effect on your writing just as it has an effect on your personality. So yeah. Chrissy, have you ever thought about being part of a writer's group?
I've been in part of several of them, and so yeah, I enjoyed them, but I don't have the time for them anymore. This year I'm just focusing on getting more out, to writing more. And I've already got 2 things now that I can publish, maybe more. So
that's great.
Yeah, it really is. I just need to get the editing done, and once that's done, I get to publish. And I'm kind of thrilled about that.
Yeah. When you were part of a writing group, was it more of like a sit down and write type of group, or was it critique online? Was it online writing group?
Most of the time, most of my life, I've lived in places where people weren't nearby. So, like, I lived 30 miles from town, no car, no transportation. So,
nice.
Online has opened my horizons quite a lot. So most of my friends are online, and I game
your
online.
writers group are online.
my writer's
Yeah,
groups are
I
really-
did Scribophile last year and I loved it. But again, like you, I actually found that going to my in-person writers group took less time from my life being on Scribophile. Scribophile can be a major time suck. It's like Facebook for writers. You can just sit there and read everybody's story and critique everybody's story and get absolutely no writing done.
Well, the one I was part of, they expected you to do 2 critiques a month, and in return you get a critique for yourself. And it's not guaranteed. You put your stuff up and maybe somebody will do it. And if you have 2 credits for one return, basically. And that way everybody gets, or they try to get everybody some feedback on their stories. But because I was doing novels at that time, it was harder to get any feedback because who's going to invest that much time in an entire novel?
Yeah.
So, Scribophile is run kind of the same way. I think you have to do more critiques. It's not 2 for 1. It's more like 5 for 1. Mm-hmm. But there are a lot of people on there that are willing to critique novels, but it takes you forever to work up enough credits to be able to have your novel critiqued. Right. There's an excellent writers group, and this is going to be my one regret about leaving the U.S. is that I'm leaving it before I ever attended. San Francisco Writers Workshop is literally an hour away. I've never been able to attend because of the cost of gas, the cost of toll, and the cost of parking. That is the workshop. There are, but I'm broke. I don't have that kind of money or that kind of time. It's a 2-hour bus ride versus a 1-hour car. Ouch. Yeah. And the bus stops at a certain hour, which should be a rush to try to get home before it stops. It's not convenient. And so I've always wanted to go, but at first I was too afraid to go. Mm-hmm. And then when I got rid of my fear, I just financially couldn't go. And it is my one biggest regret because literally the kinds of novels that come out of there are the kind of novels I want to write. Kite Runner was workshopped in that workshop. Mm. It's the oldest, longest running workshop in the US. And I'm like, really? I'm leaving without ever having gone.
Workshops can be wonderful experiences. I think as long as you go in with an open mind and you don't go in expecting that they are always right and you are always wrong or something like that.
Or that they're going to fix your stuff, or that you're going to like everybody.
Right.
You can't go in
it's a group of people. You're going to have the same problems that you have in every other situation. And not everybody's going to get along. Like, I don't like certain genres of books. And if you bring that to a writer's workshop, I'm still not going to like it.
Exactly. Gerald, when you first started going to a writer's workshop, did you have any fears or anything that you had to overcome that first time?
Oh, crikey. No, I think I've now found I've been a member of a couple of, these are all real life ones. I've been a member of a couple of real life ones which I felt were going in the wrong direction for me and was making me write and contribute to things that I didn't like to contribute. And they had like group pieces. So you were writing a chapter and then someone else would write a chapter and then, they'd go off in a different direction that you didn't want your story to go off in. And it's just frustrating. But I've got my sort of general writing group. I've got my critique group, and I've got another one that's just a short term. It's like an introduction to writing, but the woman who runs it has great prompts, picture prompts, card prompts.
So it's almost like a workshop rather than...
It is. I think it's called a sort of introduction to writing workshop, and I went along to support her because I knew her, and I just thought, if no one turns up, it's going to be really bad. But loads of people turned up, and it's, it's a great place to generate new ideas. So that's pretty good. And I've been in online ones too, several online groups, and I tend not to do them anymore. Again, like about Scribophile, you can spend hours and hours and hours just wasting time.
For me, when I first went to a writer's group, I had 2 main fears. One, I was afraid of sharing my work because I was afraid that my work would suck so badly that I would be discouraged. It wasn't that I was afraid that it was going to suck so badly I would get ripped apart. I was afraid that it would suck so badly that it would get ripped apart and then I would get nervous and stop writing. And I also was afraid of being in a room with that many people, just because I don't like, I can be around a lot of people, but I'm very sensitive to other people. And if there's people I don't like, it makes me queasy. And it can even give me a little bit of anxiety. And so those were my two biggest fears. And what helped me overcome those fears was having a story that I love so much that I just really wanted it to get better on a level that overcame my fear. So I wanted my book to be better more than I wanted to avoid being in a room full of strangers. And once I had that, it was kind of just close my eyes and jump in. And after that first time, I swear I must have scheduled myself to attend this thing like 5 times. I kept like canceling and not going. And then finally I showed up. And then afterwards I was like, what was I so afraid of? Because we were all awkward. We all had anxiety. All of us were nervous. And it was a wonderful experience.
Okay. So the online ones are nice because you can go in and you can see how what level other people are in before you actually submit. And this is going to be awful to say, but
just say it.
It's encouraging because you go in and you read some people's samples and you realize my stuff is so much better than that. To be fair, I've read traditionally published books where I read them and I'm like, my stuff is so much better than that. How did this get published? This is awful.
I think we've all had those experiences. But that is great. And one thing I found, because I really did enjoy my time at Scribophile, was like you, I was able to see where people were at. So it was encouraging.
Right.
But also two things I'm thinking. One, I was able to get my book seen by people that write and see the types of books I wanted to see. So I could look at profiles and say, oh, okay, this person's read this book, and this book. I like those books. I look at their writing. I realize they're trying to push literary fiction. So then I would friend them and I would ask them to critique my work. And that was really helpful. The other thing was sometimes people would resubmit stories. A lot of people would get a critique and then they would rewrite, go through revision, and they would submit the revision. And there were a couple of times where I got to see the before and after. And that was super encouraging because you would read the before and you're like, oh, this story is just, And it's not going anywhere. It has lots of language problems. It would be super messy. And me, I was always trying to make it perfect before I got it up there. But a lot of people would literally put up their rough drafts because they were that brave. And I use brave rather than so because I think it is a brave decision to fix it that early in the process. And then I would see this almost completed work and it was amazing. And that also was really encouraging because you could see that even something that started super messy and super ugly and not fluid could end up being a really, really nice piece of writing.
Yeah,
I think workshops are best for people who are early in their writing career. And that you use the workshops to get to a certain point, and then you just need editors, because once you find your voice and once you know what you want to write and the style, then all you need is to tighten it and to make the grammar and the spelling good and to figure out those what's good and what's bad. And you can't really do that in a workshop. You might be able to, depending on the workshop, if you have people who are at the same level as you. But most workshops aren't like that.
How do you feel about that, Gerald?
Yeah, I tend to agree. Firstly, in the critique group, we always say what stage the piece that we're submitting is at, whether it's first draft, and generally first draft with a quick run through just to correct simple errors. But some people are submitting bits that they've rewritten a couple of times, so you know whether to be whether to look at basic errors or whether to overlook them because the things could change and look at the overall story, concentrate more on the overall story. And I forgot what I was going to say then.
That's what happens,
What were you talking
about?
We were talking about peaches and schnapps and
about writing groups and levels and stuff like that. And I think it's hard to judge the quality of your writing if the people that the majority of the people in your group are beginning writers, because they all have, you know, fairly basic problems, and so I agree with Chrissy a little bit that you get to a certain stage, and when you get to a level, and that's why I said earlier that the critique group isn't going to change my writing, it's going to change my storytelling. So you know, does this story work? But they're not, you know, I suspect, and even if they did say, you know, I don't like how you do this and how you're telling this story, I'll just ignore them, because that's how I write.
For me, I partially agree with both of you and I partially disagree. Okay. I think that there are different types of writing groups.
Well, and that's
definitely
part of it. Is that
part of it.
Yeah, some of them, if you have everybody on the same level as you, then it can still be beneficial. But like we both said, a lot of them are beginning authors.
I think if you're an advanced author, I think creating a writing community is much more crucial. And so when I look at the biggest writers, the most important writers, the writers who have literally changed the way we write, most of them worked in small groups together. They traded manuscripts. I'm talking about Hunter S. Thompson. I'm talking about Virginia Woolf. Like, she wrote a lot. She actually wrote essays in a writing group, and I have a collection of them. Stephen King hangs out with Amy Tan, and when they're not talking writing, they're jamming to rock music. And so, you know, I think that is what I would like to have for myself. And so the conference I went to last year really was the first step in that, because it was a huge writers conference that was full of writers who were much further along in the process than I was. And it was being taught by people who I would consider masters of the craft. And it was much more collaborative rather than I'm going to stand here and teach you how to write. It wasn't like that. And I learned an astronomical amount from being at the Napa Valley Writers Group. The writers group that I'm trying to get into now is VONA, which is a writers group that is it's a 1 week writers workshop that offers both classes on fiction and various different sections, but also offers a residency one-on-one with a writer to work on your manuscript. And that one is geared towards writers of color. And again, all the professors, all the teachers are really, really high end, and it's really focused on improving craft. I'm going to learn more from going to either of those conferences than I'm going to learn at a local writers group. And so now when I look at a local writers group, I'm looking more for emotional support, and I'm looking for friendship, and I'm looking for accountability more than I'm looking for actual instruction or anything on the writing. Chrissy, good call. We are rounding up on an hour. This has been such an interesting discussion. We're just going to keep going forever and ever and ever. Yeah. So let's not do that. Did we want to read anything? Since we're coming up on an hour, we should probably keep it short. If you're ready, hit it, girl.
Hold on, let me minimize Audacity. This is from the one I just wrote. So our marriage, our marriage hadn't always been enjoyable. Like our marriage, like any marriage, there were ups and downs, lulls in between this excitement, moments of sheer desperation where we clung to each other as though a life preserver in the maelstrom of life, and other moments like now, where the outcome had all been determined long ago. People change, and we learn to adjust with one another for half a century. Most marriages did not last more than standard 20 years, but we had prevailed through new careers, new hopes, new hobbies, and new laws, including the laws against childbearing without consent. Children had always been close to Nancy's heart. She spent many years teaching young children child development in small classes over the net. Then she spent another quarter century working in research and development for childhood illnesses and preventing of hereditary illnesses. Her latest interest had been biological plant life and interspecies hybridization. I saw the signs coming, but I denied them. She wanted more. There you go.
It's hard reading our own work sometimes.
Well, I highlighted it, which I thought would make it easier, and it's white on blue, and it was not easier.
How about you, Gerald?
Yeah, I got a little bit. The term transgender was not in his parents' dictionary. He explained what it was, how it affected him, how he felt, and how he didn't want to be known as Matthew anymore. They didn't understand. To them, each person was male or female, digital, binary, one or the other. Just tick the damned box, Matthew. So you want to be a woman? Change bloody sex then. But it was more than that. As he grew older and after his father died, he began to understand what the term non-binary meant, and he became liberated. His one nod to convention was to wear women's clothes and call himself Molly and refer to herself as a feminine. But to his friends and his younger family, he was now just a person, uncategorized. She played the flute and the piano, was good at maths, ironically, and enjoyed pasta and red wine. She was now who she was, not what she was. Her mother died.
Oh, I love that.
I haven't finished. Get out of it. Her mother died without understanding, but she knew the child she had brought into the world was finally happy, and surely there was no greater reward for a parent. She looked at those two boxes again. Should she just tick the F box and be done with it? Because that's what she looked like now, and how people refer to her. The point of the pen poised above the box, a slight tremor in the nib. Then she moved it sideways, drew a new box, and wrote other above it, and gave it the biggest and strongest tick she could manage. She smiled, and then there's a swear word.
I love
That's
that.
really
I love the writing. I love the ideas. It's funny that you wrote that because I literally just watched a wonderful movie from Uruguay. It's called XXY, and it was amazing. It was very delicate and amazingly written. I highly recommend it. It's on Netflix, but it was on a similar topic. And I just really, wow. It wasn't dark. It was hopeful and beautiful.
Yeah. So my latest thing on YouTube has been people who are talking about their stories of transitioning or coming out. And some of those stories are, a few of them are heartbreaking, but most of them are very hopeful and really encouraging and just amazing. And then you watch them as they're transitioning. Some of those like montages of them through the years, and it's kind of awe-inspiring.
Yeah, I've had several transgender friends through the years, but I think what surprised me about how positive it was is usually Gerald's stories are so gloomy and dreary, and you know, all of a sudden out comes this wonderful, hopeful, just breath of fresh air. That was really, really nice. This story is the one I sent to Vona. It is a story about an abused little girl who decides that her and her friends are going to make a raft and escape like Huckleberry Finn. Yeah.
So she's making up for the dark story.
Well, this isn't a dark part. This is actually a fun part. Chanel squealed when Trevor tied the last green stick. His chest tightened with apprehension. It wasn't square like he'd envisioned. Instead, it was a large, zigzagging shape with gaps between the bamboo that made him think of the deep crevasse a mountain climber fell into on TV. Will it float? Sure it'll float. Bamboo has air inside. It's like stick pillows, she said. I bet the creek goes all the way to San Francisco. Ella placed a foot on the green wood and lost her sandal in a gap. She pulled her muddy foot loose and looked down and looked between Chanel and her brother, then bit her lip. Are you really going to write it? Duh. Of course I'm going to write it. Why build it if you aren't going to write it? Chanel said with a huge shrug. I'm going to run away. Trevor, you're coming, right? Ella looked at Trevor sharply. You wouldn't. He looked at his feet and then shook his head. I can't go. I have to take care of Ella. And Mom and Dad would miss me a lot. He avoided her eyes and felt Ella snake her fingers into his hand. Chanel snorted. I thought you were my friend. I am, but I like my mom and dad. Chanel flinched as if she'd been slapped and turned away. I didn't mean... Trevor felt the air around them change, and Chanel wilted. Go away. She pushed the green raft across the mud several yards, but it got stuck on a rock and wouldn't move. She stared at the unwieldy mass and then blinked and turned away. Chanel? Trevor touched her shoulder. What? She sniffed loudly and turned her face to the sky with her eyes closed. Trevor watched her body go stiff and his stomach hurt. Please don't cry. He wrapped his thin arms around her and she softened until she was overcome with ragged tears. He'd never seen Chanel cry about anything. Trevor saw Ella shifting her feet in the mud and he patted Chanel's back, wishing he knew what to do. When Ella cried, it was easy. He could give her a snack or promise to play life and then she would stop. But Ella didn't cry like this.
Oh, very good. I like that.
I love that story. I'm hoping that it'll go somewhere. I really, really want to see it somewhere.
Yeah.
But we will see. I've submitted it 3 times, but now all the commas are where all the commas need to be.
I love that line that but I like my parents.
That is something a stupid child would say.
Exactly. And that's great. That's exactly perfect.
So who's got the writing prompt today?
I had one.
Everybody looks blank. I'll give you one.
Dang.
Here you go. There's a wall, and it's full of medals. What's the story?
Oh, wow.
A wall full of medals.
I will be writing my story for a week, and I'll have it done in a couple
there
hours.
You go. A few hours. I'm going to rewrite Storyteller, and when I come back next week, it is going to be awesome. I know it. I've redid the entire outline for this short story. I know it sounds crazy having an outline for a 4,000 word short story, but it has one. So there you go. I'm going to come back next week, and that story is going to rock, and it's going to be the next story in this collection. So fingers crossed.
Well done.
What's your goal for next week, Gerald?
I remember last week I said one of my goals for this week was to actually put some of this stuff on my blog, but I haven't done that, so I'm just going to reiterate that for next week.
How many are you gonna put on your blog?
I'm probably going to put all of January's stories up there. So I think
that's ambitious. Don't you think you should? I mean, since you've been wanting to get them on your blog, and you haven't gotten any on your blog. Don't you think your goal should be more like 1 on your blog?
What? Get out of here! I figured I'd do a month's worth, and that's worth.
You know, you could just start a Wattpad and just start putting all of your stories on the Wattpad.
I was thinking that too. Yeah, I might do that.
I actually sent my story out to my newsletter already.
That's awesome. Have you gotten any feedback yet?
I haven't. I've only gotten one person who reads them and actually sends back an email saying, "Oh, I like this," or "I didn't like this," or whatever. But so I have gotten more people who subscribe to my newsletter, which is kind of awesome.
That is awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I want to thank both of you for this week's show, and I want to thank all of our listeners for joining us. If you want to support Literary Roadhouse and check out all of our podcasts, please visit literaryroadhouse.com. And in particular, I have a request for all of our listeners. We really need iTunes reviews. It helps us a lot. Right now, we have 3 wonderful reviews. If you've been enjoying Literary Roadhouse, Bradbury Challenge, or the book club, or One Short Story Once a Week, please leave us iTunes reviews. We'd really appreciate it. And on that note, ciao.
Bye-bye.